Hello, my name is Michael Smith. I'm from the Desert Hot Springs Library, and today we're going to discuss what is a source. On today's agenda, we're going to see what is a source, why do we need a source, what is a primary, secondary, different types of sources, where can I find a source, and is my source true? What is a source? It's a foundation, the foundation of genealogy. There's a sign there that has lots of different locations and really points us in directions. It gives us information, where you found your information from. It gives you direction towards your next goal. It can confirm or disprove a claim that somebody has made or you are making. It shows you where you found your information. My dad was born in St. Louis, Missouri. The birth certificate is your source, and it is your source of information. If you didn't have that birth certificate, then you wouldn't be able to verify that claim. So that is one reason you need a source. With a source, you can then move on towards your next goal. That birth certificate, again, you will have a date, you'll have places, and they can lead you to another path. And finally, a source can confirm or disprove a claim. If you don't have it, then it's a presumption. Now that we know what a source is, let's find out what different types of sources there are. As you can see, that I have three of them on the screen. One is a primary, secondary, and I have one which is a combination of a primary and secondary source. The first I have listed is a primary source, and this is a source which is an original or a first-hand piece of evidence. This is something that is taken at the time of an event. A secondary source is a record of an event that is created after an event took place, and it's usually taken or written down by somebody who didn't take part in that event. And I have a combination of a primary and secondary source, and that's usually a document which includes both a primary and secondary source. Additionally, at the bottom, I have a link which has a glossary of terms which can help you find out different types of sources which are available. And I really would suggest looking at this to give you a better understanding of all the different types of sources, and it really will help you find out what is accessible. These are primary sources, a audio and video primary source. It's a video audio broadcast of the Hindenburg from May 6th, 1937. And it was a first-hand account of that event. And so that is an example of a primary source in both audio and video form. The second is, as you can see, it's a primary document and is the copy of the U.S. Constitution, and it was written in 1787 on September the 17th. That's a primary document. It was written down at the time when they wrote the document. And the third is a coin. The coin was created during the reign of the individual, and it has the individual's name. So it is an actual primary source. As we move on, we're on secondary sources, and the first that I have listed is a newspaper article with the beginning of the United States in World War II. and that's from the New York Times on December the 8th, 1941. It wasn't an article or a piece of document written by an individual who was there. It might have been a piece of information given to the New York Times by those there, or those who had information about what took place there. But since they weren't there at the time it took place, they are receiving secondary hand information. Plymouth Rock wasn't identified apparently until about 121 years after the landing. Now, the third is most typical, which is either an encyclopedia or a dictionary. Usually that also includes articles or books that people write, autobiographies. Not autobiographies, but biographies. And since those usually don't have primary sources in them, they are just considered secondary sources. The combination of sources, which brings together primary and secondary sources. The first one is the United States Census. Now, this one shows in 1860, but it has a primary and secondary. And I want to show you what the primary would be. Well, so when a person who's taking the census comes up to a house, they usually will have the address they go to, which is showing where a family lives at that time. So that would be the primary source. You are finding and you know from a document where they live. But you're then receiving information from a person about their age. So if I was to tell somebody right now my age, this is not an event that took place at this moment. So when you look onto a census and it shows the age, it's showing how old they are currently, not the actual age they were born at that time, like a birth certificate. The second would be actually like an employment resume. An employment resume has a lot of different pieces of information. It can be considered a primary source because it gives your address. It tells the employer lots of different pieces of information that's current, but it also gives pieces of information that takes place in the past. The final would be a death certificate. A death certificate has lots of different pieces of information, primary and secondary. You have information that's given by a coroner. You have information that's signed off by separate peoples involved. You have information that's including a birth date, which is a secondary source. You have a death time, which is a primary source. So as you can see, there are lots of different examples of a combination of sources, or a document that can have a combination of sources. So how do I know my source is true? You have the same information that is found in more than one set of records. You're looking to see that your information matches the research of others, and that your information can be re-engineered or reversed by somebody else or your own. And you're just also, you can use DNA evidence, which is really powerful and brand new. And finally, something like provenance. Provenance is something that has like a chain of how it was handed down. Those are things that add to a source's validity. There's a standard of proof that needs to be met. There are 5 standards, and one of them, as you can see, it says reasonably exhaustive research has been conducted. You need to look for anything that is out there on an individual who you're adding to your family tree. The other would be each statement of fact has a complete and accurate source citation. So if you're going to say that your father or mother was born in this state, it must have a source to back that up. And if you don't, then it's presumptuous. And if that is what you have, then you must at least make a note that your statement of fact is presumptuous. The evidence is reliable and has been skillfully correlated and interpreted. The evidence is reliable and has been skillfully correlated and interpreted. We'll take, for example, a birth certificate. Now, a birth certificate has many different parts. It has a date, the mother, father, place, and the best thing to do would be to take each one of those pieces of evidence, which would be the mother or the father, and to see if each one of those individuals is correct, because it's the person who's writing that certification who is ultimately responsible for the creation of that document. Number 4, any contradictory evidence has been resolved. Basically, again, number 1, your reasonably exhaustive research has been conducted. So a lot of this is, it's all based off of each other. The conclusion has been soundly reasoned and coherently written. So to meet this genealogical proof standard, you are looking at an all-encompassing goal of being unbiased and exhaustive of finding out just the honest truth of your genealogy. So just remember that everything that you're doing is source tested. I'd really like to thank you for joining us today at Ancestry Speaks. My name is Michael Smith from the Desert Hot Springs Library. Please follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and on our Riverside Library website.